Hey everyone, friend of the podcast, Carl Bonner is a mixing engineer who helps other producers and mixers find, attract, and build better relationships with clients who are making the kind of music you are most passionate about. He recently began developing a course based on how he trains the Spotify algorithm to make super accurate recommendations for you to find potential artists to work with. And he's giving it all away for free while it's still a work in progress. So go to carlbonner.com/coaching to learn more, and I'll have a link for that in the show notes. So go check it out. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 130 with Sam Moses. In Sam's returning episode, we chatted about so many things, including just catching up on what's been going on since our last conversation. We talked about accepting help from your community, not defining your worth by your productivity, saying no and working on your own terms. We chatted about podcasting, diversity in creative approaches, the differences between mixing and mastering, and how Sam manages to do both on occasion. We also talk about Sam's hot take on Dolby Atmos, Sam's approach to mixing and mastering, and really everything in between. So I think you're going to love this conversation. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Sam Moses once again here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Sam Moses. Sam is an RIAA Gold Record mastering engineer and the owner of Moses Mastering in Nashville, Tennessee. Sam first appeared on the show way back in the day at episode 35, and I figured it would be worth catching up. So I reached out, and he's graciously agreed to join me once again on the show. So with all that to say, welcome back to Secret Sonics, Sam.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a gift to be here again.
Thank you. So, I mean, the purpose of you coming here is just to catch up and just to see, I guess how you've grown and, evolved, because it's been a long-ass time. I feel like I remember when your episode came out, it was like one of the first really long episodes I had done. And it was like right before the pandemic hit. It was like maybe right before March of 2020.
Yeah.
And obviously a ton has happened since then. And my podcast has grown to be a longer format kind of thing somehow.
Right.
I love
it.
Thank you. Well, tell me a bit about what you've been up to and maybe how some things have changed or not changed for you.
I mean, the last 2 years have been a really interesting time for everyone. That episode we did before was heavy on, kind of how I got started, and then we got into all sorts of fun things. I like talking about religion and music and things of that nature. It was honestly probably one of the best episodes. It's a beautiful thing what you're doing, because that episode became this kind of timestamp I could share with people about where I am personally and professionally. I sent that episode around to a lot of people who, not to promote myself, but more so of people I'd lost touch with, or people who were like, what's he doing these days? And I felt like that episode really kind of captured my initial journey of Nashville, the first 6 to 8 years. I felt like you did such a good job too as a host, obviously facilitating conversation and whatnot. So I really loved doing that episode, and it really became something that I know reached a lot of people and helped spark further conversation, further community about music, life, philosophy, religion, how that all ties into each other, how that impacts what we do on a daily basis, how music is kind of just the medium in which we have community with others, and experience life and create together. So since then, there's been so much that has happened. One of the most significant things is I was in a terrible car accident last January.
Yeah.
A year ago on the 20th, which is my birthday, I had, so that's in 2 days, I had surgery.
Happy almost birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we got hit, long story short, is my wife and I were just driving on the way to the grocery store, and a big quad cab truck cut across a few lanes and just plowed into the front of our car. And 100% their fault, but it was such a cluster of an event because the people that hit us ended up being illegal immigrants, and they fled. And so it became this really crazy, we had a lawsuit going and suing insurance, and really we experienced so many things politically, especially in that time a year ago, talk about immigration
sure.
and, even before that, of course, everyone knows Trump building the wall and like there was all these things. And this was a year or so into COVID, which we had spent most of our time not living in fear, but aware that, COVID seems to be the biggest thing that could really impact us. And then instead we get hit by a truck and, go to the hospital immediately.
Oh my gosh.
I ended up having surgery, repaired my whole right foot and ankle. I broke 5 bones, collapsed arch, broke the ankle. I have plates now and screws and the whole 9 yards.
Oh shit.
Car totaled everything. So without getting into any more gruesome details, I didn't walk for 5 months this past year. So I learned how to do things on my back. I learned how to crawl. My whole life really changed last year due to a car accident and nothing to do with COVID, which was just kind of a mental, there's wisdom somewhere I'm still processing there of being heavily focused on COVID and what that means. And yes, it's serious, but then out of the blue, literally getting smacked by a giant work truck and then going into this cluster of, oh, there's no money for insurance because these people are, undocumented and the truck that hit us is registered to someone who's a fake ID and it was a mess of stuff. And so
that's a crazy story.
Yeah. So it was a doozy of last year was just a complete flip upside down of relearning. I'm still doing physical therapy a year later. Still getting mobility back, in my foot and ankle and walking. Just started working out again, finally, able to carry weight and whatnot on it. It just changed our lives. It made my wife, she just came away with sprains and bruises and thankfully nothing was broken. And then she just took care of me like I was a baby, like I couldn't do anything, So thankfully, during that period though, at the beginning of COVID, I think it was probably right when we did that first interview, I had gotten out of my commercial space, built a place at home. So I was able to what you're seeing now is my new kind of, I adopted this new way of sitting, which is basically just lazy boy recliner position. Because when I got in the accident for the first 5 to 6 months, I had to have my legs elevated always, nonstop. And so I wanted to keep working because thank God, my ears and head, everything were totally fine in that category. Even though airbags deployed and smashed into that in the windshield. It was crazy. Yeah. And I had my seatbelt on, but I just so much force of this giant truck hitting us. I started working in this laid back position. I have a bench in front of me now that sits in front of the Sterling modular desk that has all my gear in it. And I kind of adopted this new listening position that's 2 to 3 feet farther back than my sweet spot. I adore the way it sounds now. From this position. And I also now work in this lazy boy leaned back position. And any back issues I ever had went away during this past year.
Wow.
I haven't sat upright like this, sorry for the mic, in over a year, when I'm working. So now I work like this, just
You're the opposite of the Slate Raven approach,
Yes, yeah. So when I have gear, I just do a nice ab crunch and lean up and, dust the knob and come back down. But yeah, it changed the way I started sitting even in my room and hearing things. And I really kind of like it. I'm a bit further back of my sweet spot. So it's actually a bit bassier in the back here where I sit now or where I lean. And so I really started to enjoy hearing records that way, a bit more bass heavy and knowing what that sounds like. Because I'm about 1.5 feet out of my sweet spot of where the room was set up and shot. And at first I thought this was going to be terrible and whatever, but I quickly just kind of adjusted and it has been great. There's been no issues. So I know I have a large sweet spot to begin with in my room. So I'm probably still in it on some level, but the further back I get, the more the bass, kind of builds up sometimes on a back wall.
I have the opposite issue, but I totally hear that.
But anyway, that was a huge part of, last year. And so that kind of really changed priorities. I was already practicing this idea of your urgency is not my urgency kind of mentality for the last few years. And when the car accident happened, everything had to stop. Like it just was like, I'm injured. I have to rest. I have to recover. And like, there was nothing I could do. I couldn't force the process of it. I had to sit through it, literally sit through it.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so that was like most of last year was like learning this patience and learning to more so be dependent even on my wife, because I had to learn how to bathe again and like, shower and do the whole, I had a cast on up to my knee and stuff. So I had to have a bag on it and all that jazz when I was showering, and just became dependent. But what was cool about it is a lot of our friends within the area, the power of your weaknesses bringing you together. If there's one good thing about weakness, it always, in my experience, brings the community together. It's the way I like to spin when awful things happen, when your weaknesses are showing. If you allow the community to help, they usually will help out. And it was a very beautiful time of seeing friends bring meals over, friends drive me to doctor's appointments, or like help carry stuff up the stairs, or just, we were in the process of selling one of our rental homes, and I was slotted to like redo the whole front porch before we sold it, like that next week, right before the car accident. And I ended up having like 3 of my mix buddies came and did it for me. Like, wow. They repainted the front. They put up some like shiplap stuff. They remulched. And these are like clients I work with who were just like, whatever we can do, we'll be there. Like, tell us where, give us the tools. We've done this or that. We could build this. We could do that. We could paint this for you. And that was probably the most beautiful thing. Now, even like talking about it right now, it's just so dang pretty to have community and have friends.
Yeah, it just speaks to, being a community leader, or not necessarily even a community leader, but just being like, a figure in your community and actively, pursuing those relationships. And
yeah, I like just kind of calling it like participating in society is kind of how I.
Yeah, whether it's your friends or in our corner of like the audio internet.
Yeah, it's really important to do that. And, I've preached that for a while on our own podcast, and I believe it, and that's why I preach it. But when you're actually in the position of being fully humbled and weakened down to where, hey, I can't walk, hey, I can't do this, and then people start showing up and asking, whatever you need, we got you. Like, whatever you need, whatever your wife needs. That's something that's so special, and that I'm forever grateful for all those people. And I would love to return, and I don't even want to call it a favor, because I know they just did it because they love me. But I am that to some people I know, but if they ever need anything too, I would love to do that, for them too. But it's important in our current state of COVID and everything still, it seems like got maybe a light at the end of the tunnel of how to manage it better, at least in treatments and things. But it's so important to fight for that, for those relationships and community. So that's, that's not necessarily something that's changed, but it's something I got to experience firsthand again, of the importance of community.
That's amazing.
So that's a thought.
I was thinking like it's. I feel like everybody at some point, in the last couple of years had a moment of like, I don't know, I guess breakdown, or just like nothing's happening. Right. And with that comes, for me, like, let's say there was a point where like I just couldn't work because my son was home from daycare, and nothing's happening, and it's like, where does, and you kind of think to yourself like, why am I not content? I'm just here, I'm present, I'm doing like what I should be doing, but you feel that angst of, no, I should be productive, I should be in the studio. Like, did you have to overcome something like that? While this was happening?
I mean, I'm like 110%. Type of mentality. That's how I was raised. It's the gift and curse of. I'm task goal oriented, driven, and then I'm also.
I think it's an American thing.
Yeah, it probably is.
And you're a people pleaser.
People pleaser. Those are my. I call them weaknesses, honestly, because they used to get me into trouble. Now I've managed to become healthy. Have a healthy relationship with that. And kind of harness it to know I can really knock stuff out, and then I got to have hard boundaries of balance and margin, to keep myself healthy. And then with people pleasing, that's, it's a gift when you're in the service industry because you're just trying to make customers happy. But sometimes